Welcome to the Ask Amanda Show, where we solve everyday problems for the small business owner. Get nuggets of inspiration, access to experts, and answers to those burning questions preventing you from your growth. Here's your host, Amanda Benson-Tilch.
This episode of the Ask Amanda Show is brought to you by your hometown high fire area specialist since 2014, Damian White with Farmers Insurance. Damian White has been successful in helping SCB friends and family obtain insurance while others couldn't. With Farmers Insurance and their affiliate partners, Damian has quick turnaround times. They're fully staffed with 2 locations ready to serve you. You can reach Damian by calling 661-394-2802.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Ask Amanda Show. Today I'm very excited about our episode. Today I have Kelly Kozlowski with me with Aspire Counseling Services here in Santa Clarita. Kelly, tell us what you do there.
So at Aspire Counseling Services, I am the Executive Program Director of Behavioral Health Services, and we offer 4 different tracks of programs that include partial hospitalizations, which is 5 days a week, 6 hours at a time, and intensive outpatient IOP, which is 3 days a week, 3 hours at a time. We offer both for adults and adolescents. That also includes individual therapy on top of that, with a team of different therapists that run our group-based programs.
Which is how we met, because I do have 2 of my children have been over to see Kelly numerous times and have helped tremendously. So this is why I invited Kelly on the show, because as you know, all of my guests of the Ask Amanda Show are somebody that I know, like, and trust, and I think that they're a valuable resource, and that's why I have Kelly on today, because today we want to focus on mental health for young adults as they enter the workforce. And I think if you are a business owner or a manager, I think that what we're going to talk about today, you're going to find extremely helpful, hopefully a little eye-opening. You might want to grab a notepad, maybe take a few notes of some things that Kelly's going to share with us. So let's just dive into it. I'm going to start off with a definition of what is mental wellness, if you will. Mental wellness is an internal resource that helps us think, feel, connect, and function. It is an active process that helps us build resilience, grow, and flourish. It has several dimensions: our mental dimension, which involves thinking, our emotional dimension, which involves feeling, our social dimension, which involves connecting, and our psychological dimension, which involves functioning, like on your day-to-day. And I wanted to start off with that definition because there is a lot of, I think, misconceptions about what mental wellness or mental health challenges are around, and they're really focused on those 4 things: the mental, emotional, and social and psychological side of things. But we're going to talk about why is mental well-being so important in the workplace. First of all, I want to start there. Kelly, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that mental well-being in the workplace is such a huge component in our society today, within America, that I think is overlooked a lot. And we see a lot of different things within the news, within our communities. And I think that we're not doing enough within the workforce as managers or directors or corporate to help our young adults while they're entering into the workplace. A lot of the times we're just expecting them to be ready and prepared, but at the same time they're still young adults that are learning about themselves and who they are on top of these stressors and pressures of society to become an adult and to do well in this world.
Right. And mental well-being, if you are, well, I guess, it can help prevent absences, because if you're feeling fatigued, if you're struggling mentally with something, it can have physical impacts on you, correct?
Absolutely. There's something called, something that we teach is called the 10 essential emotional needs, just like physical needs that we have. And you kind of covered them: the connection, the support, the community, the purpose. There's so many things that goes into that, and we call them human givens. And if we're not fulfilling ourselves emotionally, we're then going to struggle within what we do. Same thing as physical. If we're not nurturing our body and taking care of ourselves, we're not going to do well either. So it's very similar, but yet physical health is so much more important in this world than we look at emotional health.
Right.
Or mental well-being.
It's very true. It also can help boost confidence and identity at work. So like when you're feeling, stable, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but
It's a good word to use.
But really with yourself, you're feeling more confident. You have actually an identity and a purpose when you show up every day to your job. So that's another reason why mental well-being should be talked about a little bit more, or the light shined on it more, because what are we doing as, managers or owners or directors to help people find their identity in work, and have a purpose.
And I think that really connects like belonging. What are managers and workers do allowing people to belong? Are they allowing them to embrace their strengths and weaknesses? Or are they just fixating on their weaknesses, which is then affecting their mental well-being?
Right.
Are we finding out what are the strengths of this individual and where are they best suited and fitted?
Right. To help them have a purpose.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you have that, you're going to want to come in. You're going to want to be there. You're going to want to be a part of your company. You're going to also then, these young kids are going to want to represent what they're doing. They're going to talk about it with their friends. And hey, that's free marketing within itself.
Right. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Another thing, we're going to dive into a lot of these topics, but another thing, mental well-being is so important is because it also can help these young adults, or anybody really, but manage stress and make them feel very productive. And you'll really get the most out of them when they show up to work.
Absolutely.
I want to read a statistic that I came across that I thought was so interesting, and started kind of the conversation with Kelly and I about having this show today. So this is in January of 2023, the American Psychiatric Association conducted a survey of young professional workers and found that 51% of them reported needing help for emotional or mental health problems in the past year, which was 2022. I guess that's not too surprising coming out of 2 years, later from COVID, where people were really locked down for a year and maybe longer, and then feeling the pressures of starting to get back into the workplace. So that number is not maybe as surprising, but yet it is at the same time, because what are we doing to help these young kids, young adults, enter into the workforce? And I think that's what the focus really is about today's show. And I want to just kind of dive into it about what we can be doing, what are they feeling, what are the pressures, what are they kind of struggling with. One of the things that I've experienced, so a lot of you know that I run a gym in Burbank, and I actually employ the age group we're talking about today, which is from the ages of 18 to 24. And these are very young adults. I happen to think that this age group, if we're going to categorize them from children to young adults to maybe like senior citizens, I feel like the young adults, that category just gets completely overlooked because they go from children to really just being adults. We
Correct.
Don't actually address the young adulthood of transitioning into, from the parents' home into college, or transitioning from the parents' home into the workforce, or some getting married or into a roommate situation, or we don't really address it. We just think that they have to know everything because now they're adults. You're 18, now you're an adult, so you should know how to handle your own health insurance.
And I think teachers and parents can only teach so much. That's why having strong management to help with young adults and actually being able to teach them is so important, because we all do play different roles in these young adults' lives.
Yeah, that's actually very helpful because it is a lot of pressure. I'm a parent of two young adults, and it is a lot of pressure on us to make sure that they are well equipped as you launch them, we say, and that's hard. So you do look towards teachers, or you look towards other mentors, or it's really important to talk about with them who their managers are, or who their boss is, or what's the core values of the company they want to go work for, right? I mean, I feel like these are the things that if you want your child to be successfully launched in the world, you're kind of looking for support from all of these people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you also have to do like your due diligence when you apply for that position of what is it that you stand for? Can you work in a field that maybe doesn't match with your morals or who you are as an individual? And I think our younger adults are all about identity and who they are and really representing this is who I am and this is what I stand for. So also just being mindful of that when applying for positions and making sure that we're applying for fields that suit their needs rather than them just jumping into corporate America and then not doing well and then feeling like, well, what is wrong with me?
And the reason why they jump into corporate America is because they have pressures financially to start paying for things and being on their own and building a retirement and doing all the things. And so I know that some young adults will look at a job and based on the salary only. Like they'll plug in, to Indeed or any job boards, just the salary or a management position when maybe they're not quite qualified. And then therefore they feel a lot of pressure to lead up to that title or that what the expectations are, right? I mean,
one that goes back to kind of the saying of like quality over quantity. Like we kind of like look at that. And I am one that's a big believer of I would rather work for a company and make less money that I feel like supports me and wants what's best for me than to make the extra $10,000 a year or whatever it is. But our younger kids, money talks to them.
Yeah. Are you seeing that? I mean, do you feel like that is one of the key forces that's driving them right now, the young adults?
Absolutely. And even in the interviews that I conduct and that I do for the new employees that come into our facility, money is such a big talk in these interviews. And I'm the type of person where I'm like, I don't really want to talk about money. Let me make sure you're a right fit. Let's get to know each other. Let's have this conversation. And at the end, if we're vibing, we're doing well together, okay, then let's talk about what we want. But since COVID too, with inflation, wages have gone up so high.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people, like for me, a lot of people straight out of school that feels like they're deserving of these pays that I'm like currently getting.
Yeah.
And when I started as a therapist, which obviously it's different, it was not during a pandemic, things like that.
Sure.
But I was doing an internship at $11 an hour.
Jeez.
So it's like I go back and I think about that and I'm like, wow, it's just so crazy to kind of see how much the money does talk to these generations nowadays.
Yeah. Which can be dangerous.
Extremely.
Again, because they can get into a role where they're not feeling fulfilled, inside.
Correct.
Which can lead to other stresses that brings on so many other issues with their health and everything else. Lack of sleep. Things that I think that really can break somebody down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing I've been seeing as well that things that people are struggling with is they end up just ghosting their interviews and ghosting their first day on the job. I mean, I know we laugh about it, but like this has happened to me numerous times where, I've set up an interview. We've had a great phone conversation. They sound excited. I'm excited. And they no-show. And I'm thinking, right? So then I text, no response, nothing at all. I just think what is that?
I've had the same problem. I've had people I've even accommodated people, we can set up a Google Meet or a Zoom. And same thing, sound great on the phone, resume looks great, and then it comes down for the interview and they're not logging in.
Do you think that's about anxiety? They have actual anxiety and that's why they just decide not to follow through?
I think there's two things that play into it. I definitely think it's anxiety and the fear of what if what is on paper I can't live up to? Because I think a lot of the times the younger generations, these young adults, they're hiding behind their phones a lot.
Yeah.
So actually having to face someone and be in front of someone, that's something that's so different from them. And if we talk about COVID and being on a screen for so long in our lives, some in which who still are, because a lot of schools and things like that have adapted to more online-based learning. So I think that plays a really big role. This fear of what if I'm not enough? What if what I have on paper isn't enough for who I am in person?
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's the other, I found something else that's better, but I'm too afraid to tell you that. So I'm just going to ghost you and act like nothing happened.
Okay.
And that kind of goes into the dating world of that generation too.
Yeah.
A lot of things we're seeing in the workplace where people are seeing in the dating world as well for those
that
young
makes
adults.
sense. Do you think that there's ever an aspect of it that they just don't care? So why do I have to show up? I don't care. I got something better come along. Do the young adults have that kind of mentality? Have you seen that?
I think there's maybe a select few, but I
Okay.
think there's a select few in every generation.
Yeah,
of that
that's
nature
true.
That comes from mine,
Yeah.
comes from people that are older that I'm aware of. Like, I think we all have just kind of those group of people that are I just don't really care. I'm going to
Yeah.
do what's best for me.
Yeah.
So I think it partially plays a role, but I don't think to the extent of the anxiety or I found something better.
Yeah.
I think that's more what's happening.
I think you're probably right about that. I also think that there's a lot of stresses at home. So before the show, we talked about how a lot of these young adults are still living at home. Even if they've gone to college, they've come back home. And because it's very hard to live out, afford in today's world to live out on their own or even in a roommate situation. And so I think that there's added stresses that come with in your home life probably by coming back and having them having to learn how to deal with that now at older age is different.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things too is like we have a lot of kids that go off to college and they go get a degree within their major and they're away at school and they're living in dorms and apartments and their parents are helping them with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
When college is over, they're not going to keep paying for these dorms or these
Right.
apartments for them to live in while they figure out what they're going to do. Hey, come home and you're going to figure it out. And going from 4 years of being independent
Sure.
and talking to your parents on the phone and not really actually being told what to do to then living under that roof is definitely going to be an adaptation that's very hard.
Yeah.
And then I know parents want what's best for young adults, but then it's that constant reminder of, did you apply? How'd your job interview go?
Yeah.
How did you do? So then it only creates more pressure for them. And a lot of sense of like feeling like a failure. And I think one of the things with these younger generations that we're not teaching, and I think in America in general, we could teach this, we can't have success without failure. We can't have strengths without weakness.
Yep.
So learning that it's okay to go on a job interview and not get the job.
Yeah.
I had some friends recently who are in their higher 20s, young 30s, go on multiple different job interviews feeling like they went really well, and then jobs ghosting them and not calling them back.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
feeling like, wow, like I just felt like that was so good. And then creating that to be their sense of identity. Like they don't want me, so who wants me?
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with friends. Hey, you can't allow that one job interview to be the determining factor of your self-worth and your self-esteem.
That's great. Good.
Don't
Good for
put that
you.
in their hands.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah.
these kids aren't taught that.
Yeah.
Don't put into these companies' hands that they then get to determine your self-worth and your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Self-worth and self-esteem comes from within.
Yes.
It doesn't get to be decided from someone who didn't want to hire you.
Yeah. But also them feeling the pressure of getting a job adds to that, when it didn't go well.
And then the parents are like over
Yeah.
them, and that just
Yeah.
creates even more stressor. And then a lot of the times they take jobs that they don't really want.
Yeah.
Just because they need to prove, oh, look, I got a job, I'm
capable.
trying. Correct. And then they're not happy in the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah,
So then
that's
at
a
that
struggle.
point, what do you do? And we see, I would say, some of the older generations that have worked for companies for 20, 30 years that have been miserable and didn't like it. But hey, I can't change that.
Yeah, because
I'm too established, so
Yes.
why wouldn't I go change it? But this isn't even what I'm passionate about.
Yeah. That's going to lead me into this next thing is the imposter syndrome, where people have the self-doubt of trying to be something that they're not, or they don't believe that they're the right thing, like they don't believe that they're capable of, or when they actually are. So they feel like I'm not going to apply for that job because I'm not really that, And like what you said in the beginning of like, maybe that's why they don't show up because, maybe the job description I can't really fulfill. But in reality, you're very capable. You're very, how do people get over that imposter syndrome?
So I think one of the biggest things that I even tell my clients when they come in and I work with them is, how do you know unless you try?
Mm-hmm. That's what I tell my son.
And you'd
yeah.
be surprised sometimes by the outcome.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know. Maybe you don't have the experience like someone else does when you apply for a specific position, but maybe you have the personality, the drive, the work ethic. There's so much more when we look at it. When we look at people coming in for a job interview, there's so many components we look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always tell people, just put yourself out there. It doesn't even matter if maybe there's one or two things on the job description that you don't fit. At least put yourself out there and at least you try. And if you don't get it, at least you're practicing.
Yeah.
You're learning what interviews are like.
Yeah.
You're learning what people expect. And then you can grow. Hey, you know what? I'm not in that position yet, but you know what? I'm going to start working on myself to get to that place.
Yeah.
And I think that's what all this is. It should be a learning experience.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be like black and white and it's definite concrete type thinking. This is a learning experience. And the more job interviews we go on, the better we're going to get at them.
Yeah.
And then the higher position we're going to find, or that job we've been really wanting in that position we've been looking for, we're going to get with time.
Or you're going to find one that you really relate to.
So I think the biggest thing is, I guess in a sense, being confident within who you are, being proud of who you are, and bringing your authentic self into those interviews.
Yes.
Don't let that, I have to be a manager, I have to sit tall and I have to look pretty and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Just go in and do your part and do your job.
Yeah.
I think even as a director nowadays, I've really learned that some people might not fit the position, but their like internal work and the things that they do while in the position really plays such an important factor. And I think in my workplace, that's what I look for. We have so many different personalities, so many different strengths, because in the therapy world, we say that therapy is like an art. And we have to have different art forms.
Yeah.
Not every therapist is going to be the same. So we really have like different people and different dynamics, but when we come together, we create this, as I call it, the dream team. So, and I think that's important for even people within the workplace to look at too.
Yeah.
Is this person someone you can teach?
Yes.
I've hired people like
Yes.
where, hey, you know what, they might not be exactly what I need them to be, but can I teach them? And are we teaching them is a big, I think, topic of what we're talking about today.
I think that's true too. So I always say, like, you might not meet all the requirements on the job description, but that's why it's worth going to the interview, because if the person that's interviewing you can see that you're coachable, or that you're willing to learn, and that you're eager to know those things, or you're reading a book that's going to help you achieve that. I mean, that's what this is in life. It's like gaining these experiences to level you up next, right?
Yes.
You can't just be expected to go into the job and know every single thing about it. That's why internships are good and mentorships are good, and like showing up and be willing to learn, even if you maybe take the lesser position first, knowing that you want this other position, and then working your way up towards that. I mean, I think that that's how you and I got to where we are today.
Yes.
Because we started somewhere, and then we found a love or an interest or a passion in that, and then we explored more, and it created opportunity, right? I mean,
Yes.
I think that's what we have to, these young adults, I wish that they would let that go and just accept that that's you don't know until you try.
When it's that fear of failure
Yeah.
that sits so predominantly with them, and this like, I have to be perfect, that perfectionism. But I think you touched on it really well with the imposter syndrome. How do you let go of that?
Yeah.
You show up and you be your authentic self and be willing to learn.
Yes.
I think that is such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And as you were talking in my head, I was like, wow, she just kind of touched it within herself.
Yeah.
Of that's really what it is. You show up,
Yeah.
you be authentic, and be willing to learn.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we do see in these young adults too. Don't act like you know it all.
That's something I see a lot, is some young adults do. They walk in with this approach that they know everything, you can't teach them anything, and that they're deserving of the manager title and the manager money.
Yes, if they come in with these big egos, and I'm like,
where do you get that from?
or they're putting me down. Like I've even had
Yes.
employees come in putting me down, and I was like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
let's talk about this. Like what's going on and why is that? And I don't know if it's like they want to put on this front to show the other employees how well they're doing, or look at me and where I'm at. But yes, it's this ego that they
Yeah.
come in with, that I'm the smartest, I'm the best,
Yeah.
and I will take over.
Yeah.
And that comes out though. It's very noticeable and it's very seen. And going in with that only causes more problem.
And pressure on them.
Correct. Than going in and just being yourself and being willing to learn.
Yeah.
The more you're willing to learn, the more you know your audience and learn how to adapt to your environments,
Yeah.
the better you're going to be in any which position
Yeah,
that you put
I
yourself
agree.
in.
I
Because if
agree.
we talk about like, look at animals, they have to literally adapt to their habitat around them. And even if they go to different ones, their natural instinct is to then adapt with the environment. If we could teach young adults that, it would be so beautiful, because work fields would be such a different place and world.
Yeah, it's very true. That's a good point. I think that's what our job is. I mean, let's kind of transition into that a little bit. I mean, what tips and tools would you want to offer to young adults that are entering into the workplace. And then on the flip side of that, I want to talk about what tips and tools can you offer to, managers or owners or directors as they're trying to hire these young adults.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of different components and tips and tools or coping mechanisms we can talk about. So I think for young adults that are going into the work field, when they go into the work field, things to be very mindful of is the number one thing I see is time management. It's very they're constantly scrambled and anxious and overwhelmed, and that anxiety is draining and it's hard. And by 4 hours into your 8-hour shift, you're so exhausted you don't want to do anything anymore. Or you're getting snippy and rude. But if you organized your time better and you walked into a workplace and you were prepared and you were organized, so time management, organization, those are going to be the two things that are really going to set you aside from any other employee.
And so some tools they can use for that would be like a calendar, a to-do list for the day, right? Just better time management, schedule your meetings, even like making sure you eat properly so that you show up prepared for those meetings. That's part of the time management as well, I think. Yeah. And just keeping your desk and your workspace organized.
Correct.
Yeah. It makes you feel less stressed.
Yeah. And using like Excel spreadsheets, using your, like you said, calendars, and really planning out your day. I even have my therapist plan out times that they can chart.
Okay.
Put in your Google Calendar.
Yeah.
Like charting.
Yeah.
Like this is an hour I'm going to sit down and I'm going to chart and I'm going to do my paperwork. Right. Put in your calendar when things are due so that hey, on this day I have this due and I need to make sure that I either finish it or I need to get to it.
Yeah.
And I know with my employees, something that I do as a manager, and I know we're going to talk about that on the other side, but I feel like this suits really well.
Sure.
But I have Excel spreadsheets with things that are due within our electronic medical record systems that we have. And I oversee them. If we get a new client come in, I add the new client. If we get a client discharge, I delete it for them. So they always have this tool that they can go to that they know is always going to be organized and prepared. So as a manager, we want to teach them to be organized and to be wise with their time. But if I can help them set that up and set that standard or that pace that they're going to be doing it, I do that. So as managers, it shouldn't just be like, hey, you go set this aside and you do that.
Teach them how.
And I'm a big believer that within the work field, you're as good as the janitor. So if you can't do the bottom line of taking out the trash, why are you in that management position?
Absolutely.
So really setting them up for success by being a role model and showing them if you have to be time oriented, then I have to be time oriented.
And if you're always rushing around and you're late to work and your life is a mess and you're always talking about that, guess what your employees are going to do? And
running around, stressed.
Yes.
So and you really set the tone. You set the tone of the building with how you handle things and how you go about things. And
so if your life is like that, if you're a manager or an owner and or a small business owner and your life is chaotic and messy, you cannot be upset at the employees that you hire if their life is chaotic and messy because they are marrying you.
Correct. So it's being a role model, and it's not teaching them do as I say, not as I do, because that doesn't do anything for anyone. And a lot of these young adults learn by observing.
Yes.
We can go back to when I was younger and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do at College of the Canyons, I did early child education.
I did the same thing.
There's literally rooms you go sit in and you observe. You observe the kids, you observe the teachers. And it's such a good experience. Sometimes I wish that all workplaces had these observing little rooms.
So you could see if you want to do that job or not.
It's so interesting because the reality is by observing, you're really learning so much.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think sometimes managers don't always realize. Everything you're doing, everything that you say or how you handle things, they're observing that.
Yeah.
They're taking pointers and tips. And if you're high anxiety, always late, running around, you're setting them up for failure then.
Yeah. And it also spreads to the whole culture of the company. So as a young adult, align yourself with somebody or a company or a manager. And you could sometime determine this in the interview process, which is why it's important you show up to the interview process.
Yes, stop ghosting the interviews.
Yeah, but you could learn this, if it's somebody that you want to aspire to be like, that's somebody that you'd want to gravitate towards, looking at so time management and organization, what other, eating healthy, taking care of yourself.
Eating healthy, and then also self-advocacy. If there's things going on in the workplace that you're uncomfortable with, go talk to someone.
Okay.
That should
That's good.
definitely always be something. Hey, I noticed this. Or if you have an idea, bring it to somebody. I think one of the biggest things that we can do is nourish the brain, feed the brain. And if you have ideas and things and concepts like that, bring them to us. And if they're supported through that, they're going to flourish and they're going to want to be at work and they're going to be excited and talk about it outside at work and in the home.
And feel important.
Correct. So I think those are important. And another thing too is just making sure you're taking care of yourself. I think self-care is so important, but I think a lot of the time self-care gets not viewed as in the right way. Sometimes people view self-care as like a nap. Sometimes people view self-care as like, I guess for us ladies, a facial or getting our nails done. But I actually talked to someone recently and they were telling me that self-care really is finding quiet time and space to do something for you. Getting your nails done or getting a facial or getting your hair done, these are things that just like should be happening. They shouldn't be things that we're like, this is our self-care.
Yeah.
On top of that, we should be taking quiet time to reflect, quiet time to read a book
So
and
maybe
nourish our
meditation
brain.
or a walk or something.
Yeah, going for an outside walk, meditation, mindfulness, deep breathing, a lot of things that I guess we teach in our mental health facility.
Yeah. You know where they teach that? In kindergarten.
Yes.
They want you to have quiet time on the rug.
We just need to go back to the
I'm telling
observing. But I think something too
Yeah.
that my mother taught me and that has been distilled in me since I was a child, that I even teach my staff or my friends and people around me is that reading is the key to knowledge.
Yeah.
The more that you read, the more that you're aware of what's going on,
Yeah.
the better you're going to do. And I would also say for these young adults, none of them want to read.
Yeah.
Read the policies and procedures handbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know what the company stands for.
Yeah.
Read their mission statement.
Yes.
And know what they represent and who they are. The more that you know those things and the more you read about them, the better you're going to be within the workplace.
Yeah. It's the first thing that I do on day one when we put somebody new in a position at the gym is they sit down and they go through the employee handbook. I actually have what's called the BFC. It's Burbank Fitness Club, but the BFC Bible, which is a book that we have put together with all of our policies and procedures, but our core values, our job descriptions, just our current promotions, and just names and phone numbers of everybody, a contact list. So they have access to that at all times. And we always encourage them if they can't remember to do something, like it's in the Bible, like we just go to the Bible.
Yes.
So things like that, you're right. I think learning that, taking time to learn that stuff is also very helpful. But asking for help when they need things as well, reaching out to their mentors. One of the things that I learned when I used to work at Hyatt was we did a one-on-one meeting with our direct report once a month. And it was we would do these 5-minute stand-ups, which was every day to kind of get the temperature of everybody and what everybody had going on for the day. So we knew how to support each other when the day started.
Okay.
But a one-on-one with our manager was so helpful because it gave, and we knew when to expect it. So I would have a list of things that I needed help with or guidance on, or I needed like some support with something. And they always were, my manager or my director was always so great in having those one-on-ones. It wasn't a moment to scold me. It wasn't a moment for them to tell me I need to do something better or you got to hit your number or whatever. It really was a moment meant for me to have their time. And I think if managers or even owners, even if you're a very small business of like 5 people, I highly recommend having a one-on-one with your team because it really does allow for conversation for them to express their ideas, like what you were mentioning before, and then for them to feel important.
When I think a lot of these young adults are afraid to go to their managers, to speak to their managers because of that fear of like failure or what will they think or how will they feel.
Yeah.
So I do think having that space and that time that's created, if it's once a month, every 2 weeks, once a week or whatever it is, it's really going to allow them to build a relationship with the manager and to become more comfortable with them. So I do think that's a beautiful thing. And I do think that will allow a lot of help for these young adults to really be able to learn,
express,
to blossom, to grow, and just to feel supported. What do all these young kids want?
Yeah.
They want to feel heard, understood, and supported.
Yeah.
And I know you did a podcast on active listening before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
such an important skill for a manager
Yes.
to have as well as a worker to have.
Yeah.
So these young adults actively listening to what is it they're asking me? What is it that they need me to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because we also have perception and we perceive things different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can also create a lot of conflict or chaos.
Yeah.
So just making sure that you are creating that time in that space, it's so important. And like you said, even like giving them the time and the space to read your Bible, the BFC Bible.
Yeah, yeah.
You're allowing them to have the time to do it. A lot of companies, HR sends it to them and it's read it on your own time.
That's true. That's true.
And they never open it.
And then there's no room for questions.
Well,
So,
then
like,
they don't open it.
Yeah,
And then they come to you with these questions and you're like, don't you know this answer?
Yeah, but also, like, do you have any questions after you've read this? Or, like, what are your concerns? Do you want me to walk you through anything? Because some people are visual learners or tactical learners, not just visual. They need to be walked through certain things.
Correct. And those meetings, those one-on-ones is going to help with that. Are you more visual? Are you more like, do you need a handout? Do you need me to type something up and give it to you so you're more aware? And I think as managers too, really learning your employees and learning what they need and what they want. Yeah. Do you need to send a to-do list of what needs to get done and what hasn't got done? Can you just give a verbal cue?
Yeah.
What is the employee that can take it and can't? And I think on my team, I have employees who are very good when I verbally speak to them. I have employees that need kind of a few emails and reminders.
Yeah.
And I have some employees who are just they kind of just jump to it and they get these tasks done without me even having to ask them and going above and beyond. So everyone's different, but as a manager, I think it's your job too to learn how do they learn?
Yeah.
And how can we provide that learning for them?
One of my interview questions is, how do you prefer to be communicated with?
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Hey, you guys, just on that note, if you do want any of my interview questions, I'm happy to send them to you. Just send me a message because I have structured interview questions that I tailor towards their resume when they give me their resume, so I can ask certain questions. But I'm happy to share those because I think that's helpful.
I love that. And I love also, if we think about it, like we're talking about the young adults having to be like time oriented and organized. That's being organized and prepared.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're trying to teach
Yes.
them. So that's so beautiful that you've created that structure, you've built that, and you have that. And that is really important because there are a lot of specific questions that you need to ask. I have specific tailored questions that I ask in an interview, definitely obviously geared more towards the therapy world. But one of the biggest questions that I ask for new therapists coming in is, if you had a suicidal client, how would you handle it? And that says a lot.
Yeah.
You can really tell the people that are in the field because they want to help and make people grow, and the people that just went to school because they saw the money.
Yeah.
And this is something that
They have
they're
a
now going
textbook
to do.
answer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's, a textbook isn't going to do anything, especially in the therapy world. We go to school, we learn things, but that textbook really isn't anything. Once you get into the field and you start to do it, you really learn, okay, wow, what I was learned in school really isn't going to help me with much of this.
That's typical anywhere. I feel like you need hands-on. That's why internships are important, and opening your company up to that, and also to be a mentor, I think, to these young kids are also, we could have a whole nother show, and I probably will actually, on mentorship. I think that's a great one.
Yes.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about burnout.
Oh,
Because young adults, I feel like young adults and the term burnout, they go hand in hand. Especially recently, but I mean, since kids started going to college and they get out of college, I feel like they experience burnout very quickly.
They do. I think a lot of the younger generations nowadays, their threshold of what they can take on has gone down and down and down, and they get overwhelmed very easily. I think this plays a role with the fear of failure, the perfectionism. There's so many things to it. But I think burnout also comes from not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So you're always putting other people's needs above your own.
Yeah.
If that's your parents, trying to please your parents. That's trying to please your boss. If that's trying to please your romantic partner. If that's trying to please your friends. I think a lot of people don't take care of themselves.
The other thing I think about too, was in doing my research for the show, is listening to another qualified therapist talk to a group of therapists about burnout. And they said that when you're in college, if you are in college, that you are, for every one unit you take, you're expected to have 3 hours of study time.
Correct.
And then you're also expected to be socially active and volunteer and maybe also have a job. And they don't teach you in college anything about work-life balance. And yet when we become adults and now you're in the workforce, you need to know all about work-life balance. And I thought that was so interesting because we are not teaching them about, we're actually burning them out because, oh, they're young, they can take it.
And they really can't. And
I know.
There are a lot of like mental well-being symptoms that is more physical. So that anxiety, the shakes, the jitters, racing heart, there's so many things that kind of play within that. So I do think that burnout in these young adults, it's really stemming from trying to please others. And I can go back to when I was younger. Pleasing others was such a big thing because no one taught me any different.
Yeah.
And I was trying to show everybody
Me
that I
too.
could do this and I was great. And
Yeah.
but it's because of those social pressures.
Yeah.
So it's, I think, teaching them that work-life balance that's so important. I think I'm still learning it myself, and I'm in my 30s. So,
Yeah.
But it really is learning that your job is a part of your life, but it's not your whole life.
Yes.
And I think when we have these pressures of, I have to get a job because my parents are on me, I have to all of a sudden make enough money to pay for all my bills and move out. So we have all these stressors, or my friends are doing it and I haven't done it. They push and push and push themselves to the point that they burn out. And we do see a lot of people in their young 20s. So we're talking about 18 to 24. That would be considered our adult group.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of people in that age range that come into our mental health, intensive outpatient, and partial hospitalization program due to stress leave and burnout from the workplace.
So how would somebody avoid burnout?
So I think that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with self-care.
Okay.
So first of all, self-care, making sure you're taking care of yourself, doing what's best for you. This is going to sound silly, but when I used to work as a clinical manager for Aspire, but at a different location in Simi Valley, we were always so busy and we got 30-minute lunches, and leaving to go to lunch and come back in 30 minutes was always really difficult.
Sure.
So I'd bring my lunches with me, but I would make it a point to close my door, lock the door, and put on like a TV show on my phone or on my laptop, just to really take 30 minutes to turn my brain off because I'm sitting at my desk.
Yeah.
And if I'm sitting at my desk,
You're
I
gonna
want to work.
Yes.
So I had to learn, hey, I need these 30 minutes to reset.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we have these laws that every 4 to 5 hours you have to get a break.
Yeah.
And there are certain amounts of times that you get breaks for, depending on how long your shift
Yeah.
is. So
Take the breaks.
Correct. You have to take the breaks. Throw on your headphones, listen to some music, put on a podcast, do something of that nature to really just take that step away from work in that time frame.
Yeah.
Because when we're not, we're just breaking down. And for me, a TV show, it just made me kind of get out of my own head and out of my own self and just think and focus about something else. So if they're working in this work field where they don't really have time to leave to go to lunch or take that time to go to lunch, make sure that you at least just unplug. I guess that's really the word I want to use is unplug.
That's great
So I
advice.
think that's really important when it comes to burnout within the workplace and then outside of the workplace, that self-care, taking care of yourself, going for walks. You could even go for a walk on your 30-minute break if you need to. Bring a smoothie, blend your smoothie out real quick, and then go take a 10-minute walk or sit outside if you have that accessibility within the workplace and where you work.
I think another thing is find somebody to talk to, because I think that is, if you're experiencing any of these, anxious, any of these symptoms that you're saying, which would lead to burnout. It's if you're not already there, if you don't have an outlet or somebody to talk to about what you're experiencing. And then if somebody comes to you and wants to express that with you or talk to you about things, please be a good listener. Go back and listen to my other podcasts about, being a better listener, because not everybody wants you to solve their problem. Sometimes they just want you to listen, like what we said before. They just want to be heard. And I think that finding somebody that you can talk to, that you're comfortable with outside of work, or even if it's inside of work, but taking that time away is really important. And that will also help you with avoiding burnout.
Yeah, and something that I would like to point out with that too is a lot of people have this stigma of therapy.
Yeah.
And you're talking about just finding someone to talk to.
Yes.
some of my clients just come to me and talk about their day-to-day life, the stressors of their job, and that is the bulk of our session. And it doesn't always have to be these huge life things or traumas. Sometimes just having someone that's non-biased, that doesn't know your experience, and that's just there to listen and to help. So maybe even for the young adults in the workplace, maybe go to therapy. Find a counselor or someone that you can talk to. But also, if you can't, then if you don't have the means to that, obviously, find a friend, someone in the workplace, things like that. And I think what we were talking about earlier, some tips and pointers for young adults in the workplace. I do think connecting with someone at work is very important.
Yes.
Someone who
great advice
feels the same way as you, and that you can call or leave work and maybe go grab a bite to eat and just talk about, oh God, this week and what went on, and just being able to get that off your chest and not hold it in sometimes can make the world's difference within that burnout and just in the workplace in general.
Yeah, I love that you said that. So I'm going to say this on the other side. As a manager of these young adults, I have created opportunities for them to go outside of the workplace and connect, because sometimes people are shy and they don't know how to reach out. They don't know how to ask for a teammate's phone number or start that conversation without feeling weird. So I've created, like off-site adventures and things to allow for that to happen, or I've encouraged them to do that. And that's always been helpful. So like if you are in a role where you can do that, provide an opportunity for people to do that, I think that would be helpful as well.
And we do that too. So we have once a month meetings where we I'll order like Chick-fil-A, or we'll go to the bowling alley and we'll bowl for an hour.
That's nice.
And we have our staff meeting while we're bowling. So it's like we're talking and we're getting everything out, but at the same time we're having fun.
Yeah, laughing.
So I think if you can create that environment, or even I think sometimes even the littlest things of like if you can provide lunch for your employees during a staff meeting every so often, just to make them feel special. Or occasionally I'll text the group and say, hey, what's everyone's Starbucks orders? I'm going to Starbucks before I come in today. I wanted to grab everybody a drink.
I do that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
so and it's those little things in these younger generations where they feel special. They don't need always the bonus or the big promotion. Sometimes they just need someone to be kind and caring. And I even had an employee once, I remember their orders.
Yeah.
So I just one day ordered food without telling them. And I had one come to me like, thank you so much for remembering what I liked.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, of course, not a problem. I'm glad.
You made them feel special.
Yes. And those are little things. And yes, remember things about them.
Yeah.
Remember what they like, what they enjoy. Remember what's going on in their life, and occasionally say, hey, I know you had some family stuff going on. How are you doing?
Yes. Checking in is important.
The how are you doing? Just that simple question can go a mile long.
Yeah.
So such an important part of the workplace for both the young adults and the managers or directors.
Yes.
So I think all of this is such great input and advice to give to managers. And
I love
young
our
adults.
whole conversation today, Kelly. It's been so great. I hope everybody has a lot of great takeaways. I hope that everybody maybe took some notes, either as a young adult listening or as a director or a manager or a business owner that employs young adults. I feel like we really touched on so many great topics, I guess. I'm not sure how to sum it all up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think something too that I would love to put out there is if you have any listeners that reach out and maybe want someone to go to the workplace to kind of maybe help learn about mental well-being, I would love to be that person for
That's
them.
a great idea, Kelly. That's perfect. Thank you. So if people want to connect with you, how can they reach out to you?
So if you guys wanted to connect with me, my direct line is 661-296 4444, and my direct extension is 702, but you can always ask for me, Kelly. But we also have a website, Aspire Counseling Services. If you Google us, you'll find the website. It has all of our locations. We are located in, I believe, 8 different places within California, and then one site within Arizona. And then also we have Instagrams for all our different sites. We have Facebook. So we have Twitter. There's a lot of different places that you guys can go to find us. And then we have a direct intake line for anyone that's struggling. It's 24/7. There's also a chat within on our website if maybe you don't want to call. So if you are someone struggling with mental health and you need a little bit more support than maybe you feel that you've been provided, please feel free to reach out to us. Our intake line is 888-585-7373. And like I said, if you go to our website, Aspire Counseling Services, you can just look it up. It'll pop right up. There is an online chat that is available 24/7. So if you just need someone to talk to or you're struggling and you need to reach out, please do. those services are available within our facility, and we're here to help in any which way that we can.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
course.
taking time for being on the show. Everybody, thank you for watching another episode of the Ask Amanda Show. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Do you have a topic you'd love to hear about? Or is there something you want to ask Amanda? Make sure to comment below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can be notified when we post new episodes.